Imagine this scenario for a second. Um, you're sitting across from a friend or maybe a colleague, and you ask them how they're doing. And they look at you and they say, I'm fine. I'm just tired.
Right, the classic go-to response.
Exactly. But as they say it, you notice, like their shoulders are practically glued to their ears. Their breathing is incredibly shallow, just in the top of their chest. There are these tiny micro-hesitations before they answer your questions, and their eyes keep darting to the door.
Yeah, the words are communicating, well, tired, but the underlying physiology is just screaming threat state. I mean, they are locked in a defensive posture.
Totally. Based on all of that, they're broadcasting a completely different story than the one their words are telling.
And what's really compelling about that scenario is that the person speaking probably doesn't even realize it. We constantly leak information through our physical bodies, through our breath, our tension, our asymmetry. But most of the time, the people around us simply aren't trained to read that data.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking a look at a massive stack of founder blueprints and architectural documents for this emerging human performance technology called Neural XP.
Yeah, specifically, we're exploring the development of an embodied AI system they call the mirror.
Right. And our mission today is to investigate a really fascinating question. What happens when someone trains their attention deeply enough that perception itself becomes a practical, scalable tool?
Before we delve into the mechanics of how this technology actually functions, we have to establish some crucial boundaries for this conversation. The founder of Neural XP, Tim Evans, is not a doctor.
No.
He is not a miracle worker. Neural XP is explicitly not a medical device. It does not diagnose, treat, or cure diseases, and the foundational documents make it abundantly clear that this technology is not designed to replace professional medicine or therapy.
It's important to keep that in mind, yeah.
Definitely. Instead, what we're analyzing today is a totally new category of technology. I mean, this is a system built entirely around awareness, interpretation, and physical recalibration.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the software architecture of the mirror, we actually have to step back and examine the deeply human observation that served as its foundation.
Yeah, it didn't start with an app.
No, Tim Evans didn't start this process by sitting in a room and writing code. He started by paying an obsessive level of attention to human behavior in the real world, like a master mechanic listening to an engine.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right, like you might just think, oh, my car's making a weird noise. But the mechanic instantly translates that noise into, a specific belt that's failing.
Exactly. He spent years working directly with people, and over time, his attention essentially became a diagnostic instrument. And to be clear, I don't mean a medical diagnosis. I mean, he learned to interpret the subtle, unconscious languages of the human body.
Like reading posture and breath mechanics.
Yeah, breath mechanics, emotional guarding, movement restriction, and structural asymmetry.
Wait, I have to challenge this premise early on, though. Posture is sometimes just posture, isn't it? I mean, if I'm slouching at my desk right now, couldn't it just mean my office chair is terrible?
Sure, yeah.
How does this diagnostic observation differentiate between, like, bad furniture and a dysregulated nervous system?
Well, that is the exact distinction between looking at a static snapshot versus observing a dynamic system. A bad chair might make you slouch, but a dysregulated nervous system creates rigidity.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it creates a lack of variability in how you move. Tim wasn't just looking at the angle of someone's spine. He was observing how that physical collapse correlated with repeated avoidance loops in their behavior.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
The body is constantly communicating these survival patterns, but most of us are trapped in what the documents call first-person mode. We operate on complete autopilot.
We walk around saying things like, my shoulders are just tight.
Or, I'm just an anxious person. We mistake our biological compensations for our core identity.
We think, this is just who I am, when really it's just how we are protecting ourselves.
Precisely. Tim trained himself to view people from a third-person perspective. From that outside view, he could see that these physical manifestations aren't personality traits, they are protective mechanisms.
I'm looking at these blueprints, and the leap from human intuition to a repeatable process seems massive. Because intuition is incredibly vague.
It is.
So how did he actually codify a feeling about a person's posture into a concrete, systematic rule?
He built a continuous feedback loop. It wasn't about guessing, it was about testing the system. Step 1 is observing the physical baseline and detecting the compensation pattern.
Okay.
Step 2 is mapping that physical pattern to the emotional or behavioral state it likely represents.
Right.
But here is the critical mechanism. Step 3 is offering a highly specific physical correction or awareness drill, and then step 4 is watching the real-time response of the nervous system.
So he's looking for immediate validation.
Yes. If the person shifts their posture and suddenly takes their first deep breath of the hour, the hypothesis is confirmed. It is a constant, real-time loop of input, response, and recalibration.
It is a bit confronting to think about someone watching how you stand and being able to translate how you are guarding yourself from the world. It must be vulnerable, but also kind of liberating. Before Neural XP became technology, it was a trained way of seeing.
And what's fascinating here is that because Tim was observing the entire human being in this holistic way, he quickly ran into a wall.
A wall?
Yeah, he realized that trying to fit his process into existing wellness categories was completely impossible because those categories are fundamentally fragmented.
They're entirely siloed off from one another. Think of traditional wellness apps like antivirus software that only scans for one specific type of bug.
That's exactly it.
Right. A fitness app only scans for physical weakness. A meditation app only scans for acute stress. If you have a physical symptom, you go to a medical doctor.
And when those disciplines operate in isolation, they completely fail to address the root system running underneath all of them. A fitness app has no mechanism to know if your nervous system is in a state of sheer panic before it tells you to run 5 miles.
Right. And therapy doesn't fix a collapsed physical posture that is mechanically preventing your diaphragm from taking a full breath.
Exactly. Neural XP rejects all of these traditional labels because it is functioning as a human operating system.
If we use a technology metaphor, and I love a good metaphor, the body is a vehicle. The nervous system is the operating system. Habits are installed programs. And physical pain or symptoms, well, they're just dashboard warning lights.
Yeah.
It's acting like the BIOS of a computer.
That analogy hits the core of the issue perfectly.
It is checking the fundamental hardware connection between the motherboard, your brain, and the peripherals, your body, before the operating system even boots up.
Yeah, if the foundational layer is compromised, the programs running on top of it will inevitably crash.
So what does this all mean? If we are walking around treating our bodies like disconnected vehicles, does that mean we've been completely misdiagnosing our own lack of progress in life? Like, we constantly blame our own lack of willpower when we fail to hit a goal.
That brings us to this shift from motivation to recalibration. If your nervous system is dysregulated, if it is stuck in a protective threat state, you will absolutely struggle to follow through on any complex long-term goal.
Because you're just surviving.
Right. Motivation evaporates when the body believes it is in immediate danger. You cannot out-willpower a nervous system that is actively trying to keep you safe from perceived harm. Most people are not lazy. They are operating from patterns they cannot see.
Wow. But seeing your posture and having a trained expert translate those hidden patterns for you, that's only half the battle. If Tim Evans is the only person who can do this, it's a massive bottleneck.
Oh, absolutely.
You cannot scale one human's attention to millions of people. If you want to turn this operating logic into global infrastructure, you have to figure out how to scale that deeply trained perception.
Which is the exact problem the mirror was engineered to solve. This represents a major leap in the technology landscape, specifically regarding how we interact with artificial intelligence.
Because right now, AI is mostly text.
Right. Most current AI is entirely disembodied. It relies on text-based input. You type a prompt, it gives you a synthesized answer. Conversely, most wellness applications rely heavily on self-reporting. They send a push notification asking, "How did you sleep?" Or "Rate your stress today from 1 to 10."
The blueprints point out a fatal flaw in that entire model. Self-reporting is fundamentally broken if the user lacks self-awareness.
Yes.
You cannot accurately report on patterns you don't even realize you are running. If I am trapped in that first-person autopilot, I'm going to tell the app I feel totally fine, even while I am grinding my teeth down to dust and holding my breath.
That is why the mirror shifts the paradigm toward embodied AI. It utilizes camera-based observation to turn posture, hesitation, movement restriction, and breathing mechanics into vital data points.
So it's actually looking at you.
Yes, it doesn't rely on your text input. It requires your physical baseline. It acts as an AI-assisted self-recognition platform.
The mirror does not just ask how you feel. It asks whether your body agrees.
Exactly. If you are listening to this deep dive on your commute right now, think about your grip on the steering wheel. Are your knuckles white? Are your shoulders
Are
elevated?
you clenching your jaw?
Right. A self-reporting app would ask if you are stressed, and you might say, no, I'm just driving. The mirror would log that physical tension not as traffic frustration, but as a baseline state of physical guarding.
I am looking at the architectural documents, and they outline a 10-step AI interaction flow. But how does it functionally execute this without just becoming like a digital nag? How does it actually interpret the data?
Well, the mechanism is what sets it apart. The fascinating part isn't just that it offers a correction, it is how it maps the kinematics. The mirror isn't simply measuring shoulder height in a vacuum, it is measuring the micro hesitations in your movement and comparing that data against known nervous system threat responses.
Okay, walk me through the flow.
Sure. First, it observes you. Then, it interprets the physical pattern.
Then.
Third, it explains the pattern it is seeing in plain, non-clinical language. Fourth, it offers one single, clear physical correction.
Just one. Not a bulleted list of 50 things you were doing wrong to stress you out even further.
No, only one at a time. Step 5, it watches you perform that specific correction. 6, it captures your real-time physiological response.
Like seeing if you take a breath.
Exactly. 7, it compares your before and after state. 8, it actively helps you recognize the shift you just experienced. It bridges the gap between the physical movement and the internal feeling.
And the final steps.
Finally, it stores that session as data to map a personalized trajectory of your habits over time.
I will be honest, reading through the documentation for the mirror's AI personality made me sit up perfectly straight at my desk.
It has that effect, yeah.
It is so intentional. It isn't a hyper-peppy, generic, motivational coach yelling at you through a screen. It is designed to be deeply calm and protective of the user's dignity. But it is strictly unwilling to let you disappear into your own excuses. It models the founder's direct, grounded approach.
It demands honesty between you and your own biology. But recognizing a pattern is merely the first step. The architecture had to solve a second, perhaps more difficult problem.
Human apathy.
Exactly. Because once the mirror helps you actually recognize your current operating state, you might still just shrug it off.
Right. Knowing you have a bad habit isn't the same as changing it. We all know we should drink more water and sit with better posture. How do you create immediate emotional urgency for a long-term problem?
That is the exact psychological gap the next phase of the architecture, DreamBuilder, was engineered to bridge.
Oh, this part of the documents was fascinating.
Yeah, DreamBuilder tackles the reality of biomechanical compounding. Human beings are notoriously terrible at understanding how small things compound over time. We drastically underestimate the long-term consequences of our daily physical behaviors.
What kind of behaviors?
A slight unconscious collapse in the shoulders, a chronic habit of shallow chest breathing, a behavioral loop of physically shrinking to avoid difficult conversations. What does that actually compound into over 5 years or a decade?
Here's where it gets really interesting. The blueprints detail how DreamBuilder functions as a future trajectory simulation engine. It takes the hard data from your current physical and behavioral patterns, and it visually simulates the consequences.
It really paints a picture.
It doesn't just graph it out on a chart. It creates a visceral representation of the mechanical and behavioral future you are heading toward.
And this raises an important question about how we fundamentally approach change. The purpose of DreamBuilder isn't to shame the user. It isn't a scare tactic to force you to buy a gym membership.
Good, because that never works long-term anyway.
Right. The objective is to make the need for change feel real right now, before chronic physical pain or catastrophic burnout forces you to learn the lesson the hard way. DreamBuilder gives users a meeting with the future they are currently building.
By facilitating that meeting, it completely shatters the mold of the traditional wellness industry, because the entire industry is predicated on the assumption that if people simply have enough information, they will automatically change their behavior.
Which is just not true.
No. Information alone is not transformation. If information was the cure, we would all be perfectly healthy, perfectly hydrated, and perfectly calm.
Exactly. Awareness must precede instruction. You cannot course-correct a vehicle if you refuse to admit you are driving in the wrong direction. By combining the real-time embodied feedback of the mirror with the future simulation capabilities of DreamBuilder, this technology forces a level of self-awareness that most people spend their entire lives actively avoiding.
NeuralXP is not trying to become another wellness app. It is trying to become the operating layer underneath human change. It wants to be the foundation that makes all of your other efforts, your fitness routines, your therapy sessions, your professional ambitions, actually stick.
Because you are finally operating from a regulated, conscious state rather than a hidden survival pattern.
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, synthesizing the intense human observation we talked about, the conceptualization of a holistic human operating system, and the challenge of scaling that trained perception through embodied AI, it becomes incredibly clear why this defies standard categorization.
It really does.
But we must reiterate our boundaries one final time. Neural XP is not a medical cure. It will not diagnose an illness, and it is not a replacement for professional psychological therapy. It is a profound technological tool for self-recognition and physical recalibration.
So, think back to that scenario we started with. The person sitting across from you saying, "I'm just tired," while their entire body broadcasts a state of threat. I want you to reflect on your own first-person autopilot for a moment.
Yeah, take a real look.
What warning lights are flashing on your own biological dashboard right now that your conscious mind is actively ignoring? What's your posture, your breathing, or your hesitation trying to tell you?
It is a confronting thing to consider, but it is also the prerequisite for real agency.
And it leaves us with this final thought. If our devices and cameras are about to become better at reading our unconscious physical states than our closest friends are, what does that mean for the future of human connection? Will we eventually need artificial intelligence just to teach us how to understand each other again?
It's a huge question to ponder.
It is. If people can learn to truly see themselves, they may finally be able to change the system running their life.